Have you watched Coming to America yet? The sequel to the old school Eddie Murphy movie, Coming to America? I did, and we're going to be talking about what I thought about that movie right after the intro. Welcome to the DLJonesBooks Show. I'm your host, DL Jones, and on this channel, I talk about all types of story-related topics. Topics that can pertain to movies, TV shows, books, video games, anything that has a story could potentially be a topic on this show. Now, like I said briefly, I'm going to be talking about Coming to America, the sequel to the old school Eddie Murphy movie. Yeah, I watched it over the weekend. I'm just getting around to making a video about it. I haven't watched any reviews. I haven't read any reviews. So everything that I say is going to be of my own mind, my own thoughts, no outside influences or anything like that. After I, record this video, I will check others out because I'm curious to see, what others thought about the movie versus, what I thought about the movie. Coming to America 2. Okay, so the basic plot of this movie, it takes place, I'm thinking it's 30 years after the original one. Eddie Murphy's character, Hakeem, he's still the prince. He now has 3 daughters, but no sons. So his father, the king, he is on his last legs. He's about to die. He's about to pass away. He knows it. And when that happens, Hakeem, Eddie Murphy's character, will, take his place on the throne. He will then be the king of Zamunda. But the problem with this is that he has no sons, so he doesn't have an heir. So being that he doesn't have an heir, that kind of makes Zamunda appear to be a weakened kingdom without an heir, just in case the king dies or something like that. So it kind of makes Zamunda a weakened kingdom. And one of the biggest threats of Zamunda being the weakest kingdom is that one of the neighboring towns, the thought is that they will, jump at the fact to maybe cause some problems with Zamunda, maybe they look at Zamunda as being weak and now is the time to attack. So Eddie Murphy's character, he's kind of at a disadvantage because he doesn't have any sons. He doesn't have an heir. The rule and the tradition in those countries, like Zamunda and the neighboring countries, is that you have to have a son to be an heir. Now, his oldest daughter, who is played by Kiki Layne, if you remember her from The Old Guard, they have a kind of like an arranged marriage set up for her to marry the son of the neighboring towns. Is sort of like a warlord. They are scheduled to have Kiki Layne's character marry the son because, that would, kind of bring peace. That would be like a peace type wedding, so they have an arranged wedding for those two. But Kiki Layne, her character, she has been training all her life because she wants to be the queen. She feels like, why does it have to be a male person to be the heir? Why can't I just do it? I know everything. I've been training. She feels like she should be the queen and they should just forego the whole rule about the whole, it has to be a male heir thing, which is a theme that's throughout this whole movie, the whole thing about making changes and changing the rules to fit, what is needed and not necessarily what tradition is, which that tradition of only needing a male son to be the heir, is excluding, all of the females and stuff like that. So that's a big theme in the movie. While they're, talking about the different things, like the whole thing about the not having a son and all of this kind of stuff, it was told to Hakeem, Eddie Murphy's character, that he did indeed have a son. He had a son that they didn't know about. They kept this son a secret from him throughout all of the 30 years that he's been back to, since he went to America. And that son was with Leslie Jones's character, and it was like a one-night stand situation that happened in the first movie, but he never knew he had a son out of that. And the son doesn't know him, and Leslie Jones's character don't know who he is. So on both sides, nobody knew who the other person was. Eddie Murphy's character didn't even know he had a son out of that situation. When you find out in the movie, you find out he doesn't even remember that situation, which his memory is refreshed and brought back to him as the movie went on. So there we bring you to the first part of the movie is now, Arsenio Hall, Simi, who is still in the movie, and Eddie Murphy's character, they go back to America to try to search for the son that he didn't know he had. They got information about where he is and all of the stuff, and they have his name, so they go to America to try to search for the son that he had. which of course, they eventually find the son, and they eventually bring the son back to Zamunda, and we run into a situation where the son has to pass these trials to become a prince. He has to, and once he's crowned a prince, then he could be the rightful heir to the throne. But, of course, this is where hilarity ensues, where you have the son, he's from Queens, New York. He don't know anything about Africa, Zamunda, or anything like that. So he's just a street kid from Queens, now in this kingdom in Zamunda, trying to figure things out, trying to learn things. You got Leslie Jones' character, who is his mother, which he insisted that she come along, so she's there, and that causes a lot of comedic little scenes, like with Leslie Jones's character and Eddie Murphy's wife, which is played by the same woman that he married at the in the first movie. And then, of course, you got the situation where the oldest daughter kind of feels betrayed because she's been training for this her whole life, and Eddie Murphy just went and found somebody to take her place, So it was like a lot of these little things going on, which caused for decent little story, decent little feel-good stories and stuff like that went on, with the movie and everything. Eddie Murphy's character kind of going through the motions, going through dealing with all of this stuff. And, of course, at the end, figuring things out and kind of renewing his whole thing in the first movie, if you remember, is that he didn't want to follow traditions. He wanted to do things his own way. He wanted to find love in the way, he wanted to find somebody that he actually loved and not somebody that was paired up with him. He had all of these ideals in the first movie, and it looked like, in this second movie, they made it where it looked like over time he kind of lost that. So, through the course of this movie, he kind of gains that back. And that part of the movie was like a, pretty feel-good type message that they included in this movie. And then the daughter, she was kind of bitter at first about this new half-brother showing up and, taking what she thought, what she worked hard to get, and they end up coming to terms too, as long as the movie went on and everything. So there's a lot of feel-good aspects to this movie when you watched it. Now, on to the most important part. What did I think about the movie? Now, we know what the movie is about. We know what basically happens, the major plot points of the movie and everything, but what did I think about this movie? Now, if you remember the first movie, Coming to America, that movie was funny. I remember watching that movie a million times over and over again. I actually haven't watched it in years, but I do remember watching that movie a million times over and over again. That movie was so quotable. They had a bunch of memorable lines. They had a bunch of really laugh out loud moments, that you can just repeat and laugh. Even to this day, some things can be said from that movie and you just get it and laugh, But that movie was really funny. And so now we're looking at a sequel. 30 years later, what do I think of this movie compared to that one? Well, like I said, the movie does have like a kind of feel-good background to the movie with all of the themes and the messages that they kind of put through in the movie. And those were nice, but I can't really say that I thought this movie was all that funny. When you compare it to the comedy in the first movie, like that first movie had a lot of laugh out loud moments. This movie, I can think of one moment where I actually laughed out loud. There were a lot of moments where I smiled, but as far as just a laugh out loud, oh, that was funny, I can only think of one moment. I'm not going to spoil that moment. If you've seen the movie, you probably know what I'm talking about. But there's only one moment where I actually kind of just laughed out loud. But that's not to say I didn't like the movie. It really wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was a decent movie. It felt like a family movie. And I'm guessing that's what kind of made the movie feel like something was missing. Like throughout the whole movie, I just felt like something was missing. And when the movie was over with, that's when I looked it up and I saw that it was actually PG-13 instead of rated R. So I think that aspect of the movie, it kind of made the movie a little more lighter. Almost like a family movie type feel instead of like a rated R comedy, no holds barred type funny movie, So that, I think that was what was missing to me. And along with that, just kind of took away a lot of the laughed out loud moments, because a lot of the things and a lot of the comedy that was in the movie was kind of like that good-natured comedy, that family comedy. It's like that comedy that would make you smile more so than would make you laugh, and there was a lot of that in there, and I smiled a lot, but I can only think of one time where I actually laughed. Another thing about this movie, which is a good and a bad thing, to me it kind of felt like an old school sequel. I mentioned this in an earlier video, the one that I did a couple of months ago, where I was talking about sequels from movies that's like in the 80s and 90s. Like you'll come out with a movie and you'll have the movie will be funny, and then, they'll make some money, and then they'll decide to make a sequel. And then what they do in the sequel is pretty much take a lot of the things from the first movie and just redo it in the sequel in a different environment. And that happened here. A lot of the things from the first movie that you can remember, they kind of just redid it in a second movie in more of a PG-13 fashion, with maybe sometimes with the same characters, because they brought back a lot of the characters from the first movie, which was very interesting. It was another thing that'll make you smile when you see like the two girls that they met on the date in the first movie that was rapping. It was like make you smile when they show up again in this movie. It's like, how in the world they even remember to bring those two characters back? They just had like a couple seconds in the first movie, and they brought them back in this movie, But those kind of moments were good. They were movies they were moments that made you just kind of smile and feel good about the movie. It kind of brought back nostalgia, but it didn't bring back the nostalgia in a way that this movie gave you that feeling. It just brought back nostalgia in a way where you were like, oh, I remember that from the last movie, and it made you remind you of the scenes from the last movie more so than introducing you to new equivalent scenes in this movie. You know what I'm saying? But there were some scenes that were pretty good. Like, for example, I mentioned a moment ago about Wesley Snipes' character. I think his character was one of the highlights of the movies for me. He played a warlord from the neighboring town, and he was sort of like the threat. He was the general from the neighboring nation that Zamunda was fearful of, because they figured that he was going to look at this as an opportunity to try to, be a threat towards Zamunda, since they're going to have a king and no heir, So he came up there and he was kind of played like a general. He kind of played like, yeah, you better do what I say. I better get my way or things may get bad. But it was done in a comical way and sort of like a lighthearted way. And his character in general was just funny. Like his first introduction, they came out with a dance scene and he comes dancing in the little room that they're in. And I just thought it was funny. Kiki Lane's character, who played his oldest daughter, like he had 3 daughters of varying ages, but Kiki Lane was the oldest daughter. I'm not sure how old she was. I'm guessing she was like 17 or 18. It looked like he had a daughter that maybe had been about 10, one that was probably about 15, and then he had one that, Kiki Lane, who played like the oldest daughter, which I'm guessing she was like 17 or 18. She was pretty good. She was the one that had the most speaking parts in the movie, because she was, a lot of things that was going on, a lot of the message, had to do with her. She was the one that trained to be, she trained because she's the one that wanted to rule Zamunda. She wanted to be the heir. So she was the one that was kind of affected the most when Eddie Murphy's character went out and found a son. He just all of a sudden finds a son when they need one, that pretty much was brought in not knowing anything about the nation, but is being groomed to do what she wanted to do the whole time, that she's been training for her whole life, So you had that aspect, and her character I thought was pretty good. And of course it was good to see Arsenio Hall again, playing Simi. And then they brought in a couple of new characters. They had Tracy Morgan. He was in it. He played the new son. He played his uncle. The new son, to me, the person that played the new son, while his character was okay, he was kind of forgettable. His story was more memorable to me than the actual character itself. But I like that story, altogether. But that's how we have it. I kind of feel 2 ways about the movie. I enjoyed watching it, but I was a little bit disappointed because it just wasn't as funny. It wasn't as funny as what I was expecting, not even half as funny as what I was expecting. It just felt like a family movie. It kind of felt like a Disney movie, to be honest with you, even though Disney has nothing to do with it, but it kind of felt like a Disney movie. There were some good things. Like I said, I liked seeing the different people, the cameos, Eddie Murphy must have some pull, because he had some people in this movie that I was like, yo, how did he get those? How did he get them in here? Like singers and stuff like that, which I'm not going to spoil it for you if you haven't seen it yet. You go and watch it and you'll see what I'm talking about when certain people show up on screen. You'd be like, oh, okay. But yeah, that was Coming to America. I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was that funny. I feel like it's really worth a watch. But if you are a fan of the first one, you are a fan of Eddie Murphy, you are a fan of like movies that star black actors and stuff like that, I feel like you have to see it. You know, it's your job to go and see it. What are you waiting for? If you haven't seen it yet and you're watching this video, what are you waiting for? Go check it out. It's on Amazon Prime. But yeah, I feel like it's required viewing if those topics that I mentioned are, are topics that you're interested in, that you would consider yourself aligned with. Yeah, I feel like it's required viewing in those situations. But yeah, Coming to America. It was okay. Give it a watch. Check it out. I thought it was good. I didn't like it as much as the first one. I was a little bit disappointed in the comedy, but it had a good story, a good family story, and it had a good feel to it. And I enjoyed it. And I'm ready to see more Eddie Murphy stuff. He's been kind of making a comeback lately. But yeah, I enjoy seeing him and stuff. So yeah, it was good. Coming to America. Check it out. It's on Amazon Prime. Actually, I'll put a link in the show notes. If you haven't looked at it yet, I'll put a link in the show notes that'll take you directly there, and you can check it out. And what you think about the movie. If you've seen it, let me know what you think about the movie in the comments. If you haven't seen it, go watch it, then come back here. Let me know what you think about the movie in the comments. But that's the end of my review. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. While you're here, why don't you check out that video right there? Or maybe that one right there. And while you're at it, go ahead and click that little picture of my image there and subscribe to my channel.